The COVID-19 pandemic has affected all small businesses in the U.S. Virgin Islands, but there is help to move your business forward. The Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center is available to assist entrepreneurs and small businesses. The VISBDC is the territory's #1 resource for small businesses and is sustained by the University of the Virgin Islands and the U.S. Small Business Administration. The VISBDC is nationally accredited and provides one-on-one advising, business education training, and technical assistance at no cost. Attend workshops by experts from both the public and private sectors. From idea generation to exit strategies, the staff at the VISBDC are ready to assist you. So don't wait. Call, email, or visit them on the web at www.visbdc.org and Facebook, or simply download their mobile app on the Apple or Google Play Store. Just search VISBDC. Discover how they can help your business grow and succeed.
Hello, good morning, and welcome to VISBDC Webinar Tuesdays with the SBA. We have collaborated to bring you this series of webinars to help USVI small business owners further connect and benefit from what the SBA PR and USVI District Office has to offer. Today's presenter, we have our Senior Area Manager, Mr. Wayne Huddleston. And let me just give you a reminder to put your questions in the chat, and they'll be addressed by Wayne either in the chat or later during the question and answer segment. A copy of the presentation is available upon email request to info@visbdc.org. We encourage you to take a few minutes after this training and fill out the survey that let us know how we are doing. So Senior Area Manager Wayne Huddleston, the floor is yours.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Sharika, and thank you to everyone at the SBDC for hosting these. We really appreciate you help getting the word out on SBA programs. So today I will be talking about how to secure an SBA loan, an SBA guaranteed loan for your small business. So this is going to be separate than my discussions on disaster loans that dominated the previous couple of years. We're going to start talking about our regular bread and butter loans, which are SBA guaranteed loans offered through lenders. I hope to leave enough time at the end to answer any questions you have. So I expect I'll go through my material in probably 30 minutes max, and then leave plenty of time at the end to answer any questions you have about getting a loan, getting an SBA guaranteed loan, or anything about the process. So here are the things I'm going to talk about in this presentation. I'm going to talk about just overall the different sources of capital that are out there to help you start or grow a business. I'm going to spend a little bit more time drilling down on what we call the 5 C's of credit. And these are the things that lenders review when they're looking at any prospective opportunity to provide a loan or line of credit to a business. Then I'm going to talk specifically about government guaranteed lending. And then I'm going to talk about technical assistance available to help you going forward, and then leave it open to any questions you have after that. And you can leave them in the chat if you, as Shrika said, at any time, you can leave them in the chat, or you can wait till the end and we'll unmute you and you can ask verbally if you like. So before we start though, I want to show just a short video that gives a good overview. I think it's about 2 minutes, and it gives a little good overview of where businesses find their capital typically when they're starting or growing a business.
Most young companies need money, which may or may not come as a big surprise, but they do. The #1 source they get money from is from their own savings, whether it's a few $100s or even thousands of dollars. That's what we tend to tap first. And a lot of companies don't get money from any other place. They get money from their own savings. And then after that, they're lucky enough to be cash flow positive. They're profitable. So we talk a lot as if all companies require all sorts of external capital. And the reality is that more than half of young companies get all their funding from a combination of founder savings and then cash flow from the business, and we're out of here. Next up on the list is another one that catches, I think, people by surprise, and that's credit cards. Almost every young company you can think of, to one degree or another, was funded on credit cards. And it is the single largest source of capital for young companies after founder savings. And then the next place where they tend to get money is from friends and family. After I've tapped out my credit card and I've used up all my savings, I turn to people I know and say, hey, will you help me? And that's the third biggest source of capital. And then the next place is banks. And the banks are a totally weird situation because with banks, they get a lot of attention, but they actually fund very, very few young companies. But it's not their fault. You have to think about the way bank lending works and how shareholders want banks to lend. They want them to lend money against secured assets. And young companies don't have any security. They have nothing to secure it against. And the joke in the industry is you can get all the bank funding you want as a startup as long as you don't need it. And then the last piece is venture capitalists. They get the lion's share of the attention, which in some ways is warranted. You know, your Googles and Apples and FedExes and many others all have venture capital money inside of them. But the reality is, and this is from Kaufman research, less than 20% of the fastest growing companies in the United States took any venture money. And that's not because the VCs wouldn't give it to them. It's because they didn't want it or didn't need it, because they had all those other sources. I don't need money, and I certainly don't need money on these terms. Because venture capitalists, unlike banks, they don't lend against secured assets. They give you money in exchange for shares. So they take some of your company away. So my answer is if you don't need it, definitely don't get it. There's no question the venture industry has become staid. The irony is it's intended to fund disruption, and yet it's an industry that have become complacent. And interestingly, over the last 5 or 6 years, we've seen the emergence of other mechanisms for funding, like AngelList, like these kinds of peer-to-peer funding sources, as people increasingly provide capital in smaller amounts, but more people doing it directly. Having said all of that, though, venture capitalists are hugely important for those young companies that don't have access to bank money, but are growth companies. They have the prospect of being a $5 million or $10 million company in a couple of years, and they need that growth capital to get there quickly. So it's a race. And the way you play the race is by getting money from people like venture capitalists who give you the money so you can compete with other people who are racing as fast as you are. If you can run a company off cash flow and some combination of credit card, your own savings, and friends and family, Bob's your uncle. Run. Keep all the equity, because there's no better thing than being in full control of your own destiny.
All right. Okay. So that's a little video I like to show at the beginning of this presentation that really kind of emphasizes where most businesses get their funding. Now, in this presentation, we're going to focus on lenders, but as you remember in the video, a very small amount of people, virtually no startups and very few small businesses grow their business through lending, even though that gets a lot of attention, that industry. The vast majority comes from your personal savings, your personal credit, and then going out to friends and family who want to invest. And then there are these other areas as well. You may find an angel investor who would be willing to give you some cash to be paid back, or maybe an investor or venture capitalist who wants to take some of your company. But today we're going to focus on the lending industry, because I know a lot of people are interested also in how do you get a loan to grow your business, and find that very difficult. So I want to talk about why that is difficult, but how you can also make sure you position yourself favorably if you do want to approach your lender to grow your business or buy a piece of equipment to keep your business operating or something. You'll need to know what they will need to see before they can get to a yes on a loan, whether it is an SBA guaranteed loan or not. And I'm going to talk about the differences and what an SBA guarantee does, but they're all going to be looking at the same things. So this is another graph that just further emphasizes what we've been talking about, what I've been talking about in the beginning. You'll see here 95% of startups, and this is specifically startups, businesses that have not been in existence when they were seeking financing. 95% of startups get 95% of financing anyway from personal savings and credit or friends and family that are going into their business to get started. Very rarely do you see a bank provide a loan or a line of credit to a startup. Sometimes you'll find angel investors or some other way of crowdfunding it, but banks a very minuscule amount for a startup. Most businesses get their funds, especially as a startup, is by bootstrapping, which is a way of finding a way to avoid the need for external financing through some creative means. or thriftiness or cost cutting. It could be that you have some assets or some equipment or some piece of property that you can sell and get the cash and start that business, or you can cut back in some other ways to find ways to get the cash you need to keep growing as a business without having to go outside to a lender or an investor or even friends and family. It's the most common way that people get their startup funding for a business. Today, I'm going to talk about lending. I just want to give that perspective up front because I know a lot of people who are growing their business, one of the first things they think is I should go to a loan to finance my venture going forward. And I just want to emphasize that that is a way that they can be used, but it is not a common way, especially not if you're a startup. But all lenders, when they're looking at a deal for a commercial loan, will look at what they call the 5 C's of credit. Now, this is not a universal formula that every lender looks at the same way. Now, they will all look at the 5 C's and they will all have some way of looking at that, but each lender has their own comfort level with certain industries or certain types of deals. So they will assess the 5 C's in different ways. They're all going to assess it and it's all important to them, but they may have a little bit more tolerance in some areas than another. But you, as a borrower, the number one thing you can do to make sure that you put yourself in a good position to look favorably for a lender for a loan is that show that you understand the 5 C's and you are giving them the information they need in a timely manner to assess the 5 C's thoroughly, and so that they can get to a decision. Because oftentimes these loan decisions can take a long time. Sometimes that might be a little bit of bureaucracy with the lender, but more often it's because the borrower is not getting the sufficient amount of information needed to get to that yes or get to that no quickly. So the more you can be familiar with these, the better you will be starting off. So we're going to go through each one of these and talk a little bit more in depth about what they are. So the first one I'm going to talk about is capacity, and it's hard to say that one C is more important than the others. They are all very important, but this is probably one of the first things that they're going to look at real quickly. And that is your ability to repay any debt that they're going to be saddling you with when they give you that loan. They want to make sure that your business can generate the cash flow and it is sufficient to not only pay off that debt, but to still operate and pay yourself a reasonable salary and not be too tight on funds and too risky. They want you to be comfortably making money. And so when you're paying that loan, if you're comfortable making money, then you're comfortable paying back that loan. If you're tight in some other areas, then it would be difficult to pay that loan. Typically, a lot of people, the first thing that they decide not to pay when money is tight is a loan. You know, they'll pay their employees if they need to. They'll pay those salaries. They'll pay some other things. But if there's a loan out there and they all of a sudden don't have the funds to do it, they'll typically try to slide on that loan. And so lenders want to avoid that by looking at how well you can pay that back. There are 2 main areas that they assess this. One is your credit score. There is no set score that is the magic number. It depends on a lot of other factors, but generally, if your score is below 650, you're going to have a very difficult time securing a loan. Even if you have some other favorable factors working for you and other C's, you want to have your credit score above 650. It's not to say that it's impossible to get a loan when you're under 650, but you just want to make sure, do yourself a favor, get it well above 650, into the 700s and mid 700s if you can, is more ideal. But if you're below 650, I wouldn't even go into a lender yet until you take care of that and get it up. The other one, also very, very important, is your financial statements. They want to see, does your business generate enough profit, as I mentioned, to pay back the loan? Does it have some history? As a startup, you wouldn't have any financial statements. So right off the bat, that would be risky for a lender to say, this borrower is asking me to provide a loan to a business that has no history of success. So your financial statements are very important to a lender. They typically want to see 2 to 3 years minimum of your financial statements that they can comb through. Those are going to be your cash flow statements and balance sheets. And we're going to talk about those a little bit more later. But this is probably the biggest hurdle for businesses in the Virgin Islands to overcome, especially when you're a very small business. If you're just a few employees and you've been handling your finances internally, putting together those financial statements can be difficult, but they're very important for a lender if they're going to provide you a loan. The other C, or another C, is capital. And that is essentially just really the amount of cash you're going to put in on this. So typically a lender is going to want to see that you have some skin in the game, that you're not asking them to fund this entire project themselves. They're not going to want to do that at all. So they're going to want to see at least that you put in around 20%. So if you're a business and you need $100,000 to get through a certain period, or to buy a piece of equipment, or to buy some inventories to move forward, they'll want to see that out of that $100,000 worth of equipment, you're going to pay for at least some of it. You're going to put up some of your own cash to show that you have some skin in the game, and you're not just totally putting all this risk and the responsibility for paying for that on a lender. So you want to make sure you preserve some cash in some way. Another thing they're going to need is they're going to need to have collateral, some way to secure that loan with assets, so that if you don't pay the loan and they have to claw back the money some way, that they can secure a piece of equipment. They're typically going to want some hard assets. And by that, I mean something that is easily obtainable by them and something that they can easily sell, because they don't want to necessarily be in your business. So hard assets would be like a building, a piece of common durable equipment, land, those types of things. Inventory is not really an asset that banks like to secure their loan with, because they don't want to be in your business. They don't want to have to try to sell your inventory. Land, buildings, those types of things are a little bit easier for them to secure, figure out what the value is, and then get rid of it. They don't want to be in a business of buying and selling things. They want to be in a business of making sure people make money. So you're going to have to provide some sort of collateral to that loan. Another thing is the conditions. So they will be looking at what the overall conditions are for your business. So if you are, for instance, right now, the conditions in this market are very favorable for construction workers. There is a lot of work still going on, not only for people buying or trying to build homes, but a lot of work still from Hurricanes Irma and Maria still being done to rebuild after disaster. So that would show that that's a market condition that looks favorably. Like, okay, if you're in a construction business and you know what you're doing, I know there's going to be that business out there, and there's nothing that makes me foresee any drop in that business in the near term. So they're going to be looking at that. And they want to make sure that you understand your industry. What are the things that impact your industry? If there are any supplier issues, who are your competitors? How are you going to make sure you're successful in the industry? They're going to read through your business plan to make sure you have a good understanding of that. They'll have a general understanding, but they're going to be asking you questions to make sure you understand, to let them know that their loan to you is going to get repaid. And then finally, character. This is oftentimes overlooked, but it's probably one of the most important of the 5 C's, at least in my estimation. I have seen people walk into a lender trying to secure a loan and look look weak in some of the other areas of the 5 C's. But because of their character and the way they present themselves to the lender and their background and their honesty and their reputation in the community, they were able to secure a loan even when there was a little bit of riskiness in it. On the flip side, I have seen people go into lenders and have a great deal of collateral, be operating in an industry that is very successful, have good cash flow statements and balance sheets, have their own cash put in, a lot of good credit, all sorts of things going for them. And then because of some sort of poor character flaw where they were either dishonest in an application or something else happened, the bank just said, no, we're not really interested in this because of character. This is assessed really in everything you do. Do you show up? If you make an appointment with a lender, do you show up on time? If you say you're going to bring something, do you actually bring it? Do you actually have integrity to do what you say you're going to do? When they ask about you in a community, are you a person who has a good reputation? Do you stand by your obligations even when it's not easy to do so? So there's lots of things that go to this, but just know that lenders are assessing your character and everything you do. So you want to make sure that you're always honest. When you have some bad information, one of the worst things you can do is try to hide that from a lender, because if they find out about it, they will basically just stop that deal right then, and you'll be seen as untrustworthy. But if you are upfront and you have some information that may not be as what you perceive as favorable to your application, maybe you had a bankruptcy or a divorce or something happened in your background that might look unfavorable to a lender, you just want to be upfront about it and upfront about how that impacts or will not impact your business going forward and how you've mitigated against that. They will be very happy to hear that you are upfront and honest about everything. So I'm going to go back to one of the things I talked about earlier, which was the financial statements. These are the most important things that you'll need for a business. So a business plan is very important. They're going to want to see that you understand your market, the conditions, how you're going to grow, what your plans are. But your financial statements, such as expense sheets, income statements, balance sheets, and your projections, especially if you are a startup, they want to see your projections over time since you don't have financial statements. But even if you're not a startup, they'll want to see your projections as well. They want to see what is the 3-year history, but also what are the projections that if you receive this money, how is that going to be spent? How is that going to impact your bottom line? And do you make reasonable assumptions along the way? They're going to want to see all that. I'm going to focus on a couple of the ones or a few of the ones that lenders find most problematic here in the Virgin Islands, is that oftentimes small businesses do not have accurate or credible or well put together balance sheet, income statements, and cash flow statements. These are very important for a lender to get a really good understanding of where you are as a business, how much money you have on hand, how much money you have shown to make over time, how cash flows in your business, so they can see, can this person make monthly payments regularly, or is there too much volatility going on month to month? You're going to want to see those. You're going to want to have those put together and put them in front of them so they can see them and get a good, thorough understanding of what your business looks like. I'm going to show a few examples of what those look like. So these are just very simplified and generic, but this kind of gives you just a general idea of what a balance sheet is in comparison to a cash flow statement and income statement. So a balance sheet is just a snapshot of the assets that you have and the value really of your business at the time. So in a typical balance sheet, you'll show assets such as cash. This would be maybe what you have in a bank account tied to that business. Here it says marketable securities. Not a lot of small businesses have marketable securities, but these are just essentially stocks or bonds or other securities that you could quickly turn to cash if you needed to, that are for the business. Many won't have that, but most will have accounts receivable. And these are assets, cash that you don't necessarily have on hand, but you've billed a customer and you're waiting on that customer to pay you. They may dig down into that to see how long they've been receivable, whether it's just 30 days or if it's 180 days. That's a little bit of a difference. They're also going to look at your inventories and the value of those inventories. So these would be your assets, and here this person has 768,000 in current assets, and then they separate long-term assets, and these would be if the business owns a building, owns any durable equipment. They'll look at that, they'll depreciate that to get the fair market value of those assets, and then those would be added in to your total assets. And then your claims on assets. So these would be accounts payable. This would be if you were a type of business that goes through inventories, like a restaurant going through tons of food, and you have accounts someplace and you have a debt there where you need to be paying that account payable. Those are more frequent accounts payables that are out there. So that's a claim sort of on your cash. Notes payable would be if you have a mortgage or a loan on your equipment or on a piece of property that you have. They want to see how much is that to get a sense of what your current liabilities are, any long-term notes you have. So it'll add up those total liabilities. And then the difference between liabilities and your assets would be owner's equity. So that would be how much that you got really invested in that business, and it should balance out to be exactly the same. Income statements will show income over a period of time. So typically over a year, you can show an income statement to show what were your sales during that year, what were the cost of goods sold if you had inventory that you had to purchase before you did something to it and then have to turn it around and sell it out, what the profit is, and then they'll take out what were your expenses during that time, what were your staffing expenses, your administrative expenses, what other income did you have from your operations. If you had some debt, you may have some interest expenses, and that will give you your income before taxes, but then you'll have your taxes as well, and that will be taken out, and then you'll arrive at your net income. So for this one, I don't know, this is just kind of a generic example, shows $18,000 net income, and they'll basically look at that net income and say, okay, if we're providing a loan, we're taking out that payment out of that net income. Does that net income at the end of the day still leave enough money for this person to profitably run their business? And that's where they also dive down into their cash flow statement, because if that net income was just for a month, how often does that fluctuate? So you want to see what are the changes, how are the cash inflows and outflows going out during the year? What kind of things were you doing? So a lot of these things probably wouldn't apply to many smaller businesses, not a lot, but some of them, unless you're a startup, you're probably not issuing a lot of stock. You may have some friends and family that are investing in your business or an angel investor, and so you'll need to show this is where we gave them 10%, 20% of the business, and this issuance of stock will show this is the amount of money we brought in. So on this one, you'll see that they're not making a whole lot of money from their operating activities. In fact, they're losing money on their operating activities, but they're making it up by issuing stock and borrowing money right now. So they have some financing activities that's bringing them money and keeping them cash flow positive at the end. And this would be fairly typical for a startup. You may not be making enough money to cover everything in the beginning, and you're more being floated by investors, and that's fine. But for a business that's been around for a few years, you're going to want to see this a little bit different. You want to see the operating cash flow positive. You probably won't have as much issuance of stock or selling of shares to investors, and you'll have a positive cash flow more through your operating activities than anything else. So I want to talk about how SBA is involved in the process for these loans. As I mentioned, we do not provide loans directly unless it's a disaster. So the economic injury disaster loans, some other loans that we have for COVID, after Irma and Maria, we provide loans directly to individuals because it's very difficult. And we recognize this for lenders to get up and going. A lot of the local lenders also have employees that are impacted by the disaster. So we want to make sure that we get the loans out there to help people rebuild quickly after disaster, get the roof over their heads, long-term low interest loans. But then we, for regular times, we rely on our lenders to meet those needs. But what we do is we still want to help reduce risk for lenders so that they can do more deals as much as possible. So we leverage the good credit, the good faith and credit of the federal government to back loans to lenders. We will provide a guarantee anywhere from 50 to 90% to lenders to assume risk in the loan, depending on the type of loan, in the hopes that if they've done all their due diligence and they just have perhaps maybe one part of the 5 C's, maybe someone is great and everything else, they have a good credit score, have good cash flow, good financial statements, all sorts of other things, but perhaps they just don't have enough collateral to be secured in a loan. Then the lender can turn to us and say, this would not pass our underwriting standards normally because of this one issue, but everything else looks fantastic. but we would need to get a guarantee from the federal government on this to help us actually do the deal. So we'll provide that guarantee out there to thousands and thousands of lenders across the country. And then they leverage that to just get more deals done for American businesses. You can get matched to lenders a bunch of different ways. Of course, we always recommend that if you have an existing relationship with a lender, you should start there, because then they already have, especially if your business has that relationship, and that's where you have your checking accounts. It's where you're doing your payroll or other cash management services is through a particular lender. Start there because you're their customer. They have a track record with you. They want to keep you. They can see your financial statements. They can understand how inflows and outflows happen in your accounts with them. That's really the best place to start because they have some familiarity with you. Banks are still kind of like people. So if you were going to, and they're made up of people. So if you're going to a lender, it's very difficult, just like if you were going to a person that doesn't know you at all and ask them for money for your business, you're not very likely to get a yes. But if you go to a lender that you've been working with for a long time, just like a person that knows you and is familiar with you, you're a little bit more likely for them to listen to that pitch and perhaps give you a yes on that loan. So always suggest you start with a lender you have an existing relationship with. If you don't have one, I suggest you start with one locally, because local lenders understand this market better. They may also help you be able to point you in the right direction on some services to help. They want to make sure you're successful. So start with a local lender. And then if you're just not having any luck, or you just aren't in any relationships, you can go to Lender Match. And that is a program on our site where you can put in some basic information about your prospective deal in your business. And we will just throw that out to any lender in the country who has indicated to us that they are willing to look at deals in the Virgin Islands. If someone says, yes, I'd like to take a look, they just get matched with you. We're really out of the middle on that. We just make the match, and then you can start connecting with them and make your connections with them and start the process. I suggest also not starting with one lender at a time. I have seen instances where people have gone to one Virgin Islands bank, and then it took a long time to put together all their financial statements and get all their stuff and then get it through underwriting, and it had to be reviewed by people in Puerto Rico. 6-8 months later, they come back and say, I'm sorry, we can't get this deal done for you. And you're at ground zero with any other lender. So I suggest you do that all at the same time. If you're pulling together the financial statements, they're the same financial statements every other lender is going to need to see. So you can send them to First Bank, Popular, Oriental, Bank of St. Croix, Merchants Bank, all at the same time. You can start that all and just do a shotgun approach, which is really the best approach, because oftentimes people can go through 10, 12, 20 lenders and get no's, and then they eventually get one. So if you can just hit them all at the same time, it doesn't matter if 4 of the 5 local lenders say no. If one of them says yes, then you did it and you got it in a timely fashion. So what are the advantages of an SBA loan as opposed to just a regular loan with a bank? As I mentioned, our guarantee just makes it less risky for them. You don't have to necessarily ask for the guarantee. The most important thing you need to do is understand what lenders are going to be looking for. They will ask for that guarantee from us. So if they can do the loan under fantastic terms, they will, and they won't get our guarantee. But if they want a little bit more or less risk in that loan, then they'll come to us to get that guarantee. For you, the advantage is that typically that gives them the flexibility to help you with the loan. So maybe they don't require as much collateral as they would have otherwise, or you don't have to do a large down payment. Or maybe the interest rate is a little bit better than it would have been without the guarantee. We also don't allow some other lending practices in our loans, such as balloon payments and demand clauses in loans. So you'll know that if a lender is using the SBA guarantee, you are getting a good market rate and you are getting reasonable terms, and it's not a predatory loan. So you can be assured of that. You can use an SBA guaranteed loan for lots of things. You can use it to start and grow a business, even though lots of lenders still will say, even if you're a startup, even if we're getting the SBA guarantee, we're still not comfortable with it. Some lenders will say, I typically wouldn't do a startup, but with an SBA guarantee, I will look at it. So it can allow you to do that. You can use it to buy equipment, buy your inventory, purchase a business outright if you haven't been in that business before, purchase land or real estate or other services. There's really lots of things you can use an SBA guarantee for. Now, you can't use an SBA guarantee for everything. Of course, if the loan is, or if the business is engaged in something illegal, of course, you're not going to be able to get an SBA loan for it. If there are some industries, since SBA is a federal public entity, we're guaranteeing loans with the public's dollars. And so we have to be good stewards of that dollars. And there are some industries that the public does not want us to invest in. So if it's, for instance, if it's something in the pornography industry or something like that, you're not going to be able to get it. Also, and this is probably more common down here, we do not allow SBA guarantees to be used for speculative or investment purposes. And one of the most frequent ones that come up down here is people who wish to buy homes and turn them into businesses and rent them out as Airbnbs. That is considered a speculative or investment type business. And so that will not be eligible for an SBA guarantee. Now, that's not to mean you can't get a loan. Many lenders will still give loans on that type of a business. They just cannot use the SBA guarantee for it because it's considered speculative. Our loans require that it be for a business. And if it's for a building, they require that the business be operating in that building and some other standards to it. But the vast majority of purposes that someone would need a loan for in their business, an SBA guarantee can be available for it. And one of the first steps in getting a loan is making sure you get the right help along the way. I consider myself pretty knowledgeable of the banking industry and understanding of what they're going to be looking for. So if I was needing a loan for a business, I could walk in. But even I still would go first to one of our resource partners to have some other eyes look at it. Other eyes that are not my friends and family that are going to tell me what I want to hear, but people who are well-trained, have seen lots of different business plans, understand the local lending market, and get that third perspective or fourth perspective, whatever number it may be. I want to be showing it to lots of people to help me along the way. So there are our resource partners that we have here in the islands that are active. Our Small Business Development Center, of course, you know that one because they're the one hosting today. We also have one called SCORE, which is more of a mentoring and coaching organization. It provides lots of fantastic advice and help for people trying to start or grow their business. We also have one called the Veterans Business Outreach Center. It's headquartered in Jersey. They have a location in Puerto Rico as well, but they also serve this area, and they have lots of online forums, and then they'll also collaborate closely with our local partners. But here locally, the two big ones are SCORE and the SBDC. You can walk into the SBDC, get a call, get an appointment, and sit down with a business counselor who can not only talk to you about generally your business, but can do a deep dive into your financial statements, your business plans, all sorts of things, and really help you assess how your business is doing and your plans going forward. So they can do all these things that are here. And one of the most important ones, especially in the context of this presentation, is they can help you prepare your loan application and introduce you to lenders. Now, when I say help you prepare your loan application, they are not going to be filling out your application for you and pulling together the documentation for you, but they can help you do that. So they can say, okay, here's what we're going to need. Do you have your cash flow statement? Do you have this? Let's take a look at it. Let's package this all together and make sure you're ready. And then they have an understanding of the lenders here in the community. They know which ones may have done a similar deal or in a similar industry as the one you're trying to do. They can make that introduction for you. They can not only make that introduction, but if you feel comfortable, if you like, you can have them sit in on those meetings with you and your lender to discuss what's happening so that they can have a good understanding of where you may be falling short or what you need to overcome in that process with a lender. At the end of the day, you are the one representing your business. You need to fully understand your business plan, fully be able to answer any questions that lender has, but the SBDC business advisor can be your partner along the way to provide you some objective advice and feedback to help increase your chances of getting to a yes in your loan. And there are also resources that we have. You can get updates from sba.gov/updates, sign up for our newsletter, go to our website and get information on there. We're also on Twitter. Here in the Virgin Islands, we are tied to the Puerto Rico district office. So you'll get information a lot from Puerto Rico as well. We don't have a separate account, but you can also just email me directly. I'm here in the Virgin Islands. That's my sole purpose at SBA, is really just to make sure our programs in the Virgin Islands work well. So you can email me, you can call me. That's my office line, even though it's 787, it rings here in my office on St. Croix. You can also call my cell phone or leave me a message. The best way to get in contact with me, though, is through an email. That way I have a written record. I get a lot of calls and emails, and oftentimes I just can't answer the call when you call. But if you send me an email, it also makes it easier for me to connect you with someone else. I can forward the email, or I have a written documentation of what's going on, and connect you with others to help as well. But contact me anytime. I'm the Virgin Islands person for the SBA. So we also have some technical help services on our website. So if you go to sba.gov, we have what's called a Learning Center dashboard. You can get a lot of information on just basics on how to build a business plan, or how to market your business more effectively, how to compete for government contracts, or whatever it may be. There are lots of resources that we have online. These are a series of webinars and things like that that you can watch and just get a lot of great information as you try to grow and expand your business. One called Ascent, that's tailored more towards women-owned businesses, but a lot of great information on there as well. And it's probably about time for me to move this one on COVID. There's a lot of information related to COVID, but all that's pretty much expired by now. So I'll erase that next time. But that's it. I went a little bit longer than I wanted, but it's about 11:40 now. So we have some time to answer any questions you may have. So I'll stop it here, and I can't see the chat, but if Sharika or someone can tell me if there are any questions in chat, I'd be happy to answer them.
We don't have any questions in the chat as yet, but we can give persons a chance to go ahead and type those in there.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess while persons prepare the questions, I can go ahead and say the SBDC has so much in store for USVI small businesses. You can visit our website at www.visbdc.org. Download the free VI SBDC app on your mobile device from the appropriate app store. Like and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google My Business, and you can subscribe to the VI SBDC YouTube channel to see on-demand webinars like what was captured here today. For upcoming webinars, we have a USVI veteran-focused webinar, Financing Your Venture, on October 25th. On October 26th, we have a customer service webinar entitled Don't Lose Another Customer. On the 27th, we have SCORE with content marketing, what to say and how to say it. On October 31st, we have What is PTAC? Wayne, I don't see any questions. I guess you did an outstanding job, and I'm monitoring our Facebook Live as well. And someone made a comment stating that this was very informative.
Great, great. Well, and if people don't have questions now, that's fine. People can just reach out to me or reach out to you all later. Be happy to help. Let's see. I think I see it.
We have one. I am currently a trade name. Don't you think I should update to an LLC?
It just really depends on a lot of factors. So I would, on that, I would reach out to the SBDC, have them talk about what your business is, how you intend to grow over time, how much ownership and control you want of your business, how much liability you're comfortable with, and then make that decision accordingly. There's really a lot of factors in that, and that could be a separate presentation altogether, but I would suggest meeting with either school or an SBDC counselor to discuss that.
Okay, well, Lane, I guess that's it. Thank you. And on behalf of the VISBDC network, we thank you for collaborating with us and bring forth this information.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.